Hi, I'm Chase Lucas, instructional designer, and today I'm here with...
Hi, I'm Monisha Gupta. I'm the assistant professor in marketing at the business school, and I'm also the director for the Truist Center for Leadership.
Today we're going to be talking about a learner-to-learner feedback and assignment type breakdown that Dr. Gupta uses in her classes, and we'd like to share that with you today. So come on in, we're going to show that to you.
This is great that we are talking about learner-to-learner because this is another way of learning, which is not used very often. But I've used this in a couple of classes, and this year I brought it back in a class which is called the Market Spotlight. Mm-hmm. So since I teach marketing, I called it the Market Spotlight. It's important to put the spotlight on what's really happening in the market right now, as well as it's a spotlight on the student groups when they work on this project. So really it's all about them getting together and working on some recent trends and being able to share that with the entire class. Mm-hmm. There's no better way of learning as they learn from each other,
Oh, absolutely. And learning from themselves and each other throughout the class, do those trends change throughout the courses while they're doing this assignment? Do you notice any of those trends changing?
Yes, I do. It's really beautiful because, it's a theory, right? You're teaching marketing, you're teaching the concepts. But they don't always make the connection between that concept and real life till they actually go and study it. Like today in class, they were making a presentation about the new coffee chain that's open. And they were able to talk about segmentation. They were able to do a comparison. They were able to do so many of those concepts of marketing and relate that to the course content. And that's the greatest way of learning because they're going to always remember the work they did, the research that they did. And the inputs that they did and how they collaborated with each other to be able to put up a presentation. Because once they're putting up a presentation, they're actually, they have to be confident that they know enough to be able to field questions from people. So they're going to depth, they find the right sources of information, and they actually learn how to communicate that.
And being able to communicate that, learning from you being the instructor, leading the charge in this, but also having their group members, right? So they're in 3 to 4 people per group.
Absolutely.
And they learn as much or maybe even more from each other with that too. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Absolutely, you're right. So it starts from them forming groups and then working on the work, or whatever their topic they decide. So that is decided by them. So the group comes together, so they learn teamwork. They learn how to break up the task into different, fields that each of them is best at, and then bring it all together and be able to stand up as a team in front of the entire class and stand for the point of view that they are putting out there.
So they come together, they find each other's strengths, their weaknesses, who's good at what, and then being able to organize that and synthesize that and then put out a final product. That has me thinking, what are some of the different technologies you allow them to use or seek out or give guidance to for this project?
So of course, we want to make sure that the sources of information are authentic. So it's amazing how they suddenly realize that the library is something that they can access digitally and use that extensively. So that's fantastic because they also learn how to look for the authentic sources of information, how to look for data which can be used to describe their ideas much better. So that, and then how to communicate. That's an interesting one, Chase. They don't like to email so much to each other.
Oh, no.
Yes, we do suggest OneDrive, etc., but we see a lot of Snapchat,
a lot more
Facebook,
informal the ways of doing that.
But I see a positive in that. Sure. I see the fact that now they're connected socially.
And it's so easy to make a group chat on these different platforms. And I think although it may not be as the formal sense of what we think of with group projects, but also it creates a sense of camaraderie. It's easily accessible. And the media formatting on that isn't too bad either. So you mentioned Snapchat. Did you mention Google Drive before as well? So how would they use that?
Actually, Google Drive too, but the interesting thing about Snapchat and these new social media tools is it's also got AI embedded.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where I think they first started using it.
Oh, okay. So I know you're big into, you've dove headfirst in that world. Do you know where that AI bot or where it brings that information in? Do you know, because through Blackboard it's Microsoft. Do you know where that where Snapchat's bringing its information?
I think they own those mediums, and that is why the only thing, the purpose of realizing this, of course, the good thing we've already spoken is that they're connected socially. Yeah. But the other purpose of knowing this is to be able to guide them, not to rely on too much on those sources because they're not very authentic.
Sure.
So it's great because they know how to use it a little, and then you're able to guide them to better resources like Microsoft.
This is where you're stepping in. Okay, I'm going to let you guys run a little wild with this. Get your materials, do it authentically and smartly in that way too. Just don't grab random materials.
No.
So then you keep them on that straight that path of this is how we want to do
Absolutely. In fact, so when you look at this model that we have there, it has really 3 stages. The first stage is the action stage, which is where the students are briefed about the project and given an outline of what are the expectations. I also share a rubric, which is going to be used for grading right up front. So they know what are the parameters or the scope that they're going to be judged on, and which helps to keep the entire thing, give it a nice framework. So the first stage is the action stage, and the second stage is what I call the reflection or the assimilation stage. This is where they reflect on what they want to do, then they assimilate their resources, they assimilate external resources, and they come together to be able to work on the project. And the last stage is known as the growth or the inspiration stage. So to your earlier point about inspiration, they inspire not only each other in the team to work, but they inspire the rest of the class. Because I remember when the first round of presentations got done, a bunch of teams came to me and said, we didn't include this point in our presentation, and we would like to. So, which is great, right?
Yeah, it
already proves that they're learning from each other.
And this makes me have this thought. So they're learning from each other, reassessing, growth, right? Reevaluation, all that. Do you share these with future classes when they get to this point? Do you share past work and maybe show some inspiration that way? I know we may have not talked about that, but I don't know. It came up here.
No, you're right. That is in the first stage. Okay. At the first stage, when I'm explaining the concept to them, I do share a few previous presentations, so they know what's happened in the past.
Roughly.
And then at the assimilation stage, I work closely with them because I don't want a repetition in the class. So I make sure that each group is working on something different from the other group, and that's when I dive in a little to see where they are at and make sure that the sources are, because they have to include citations, and I have to make sure that everybody submits the work at the same time. So it's not as if you can learn from another person and yours can be better. No. So that's why they come back and they understand where they may have missed a point. And that's great because it loops back to what we're really trying to do, learn from each other.
And this is where did you grab this again? Was this Howard?
Yes.
Yes.
Why not draw inspiration from the best?
Absolutely. So this is a great representation of this, and you see this happen in your classroom with your students in real time.
I do.
And this is a constant. This every time we've hit this step, we're going here, and like you said, it's a great framework, staying on track, because you obviously let them go and adventure out, say, hey, this is a rough idea, expand on this. And then I'm going to rein you back in, and then hone that blade, and then send it off, and then see how good the execution is on the project.
Second aspect to this, which is I make them write a paper.
Okay.
So the second aspect is when they write the paper on this, that's when they are allowed to go back and integrate their learnings, because the paper is a second submission.
Sure.
So that actually closes the loop in this learning process. It allows them to go back and learn from where they felt they missed out on some aspects, and now's the time to bring all those together and enhance the level of their work. And that itself is greatly fulfilling for them because it gives them an opportunity to better their own work. Life's made of second chances.
Absolutely. So I wanted to touch on some challenges you've seen.
Yes. So some of the common ones are a lot of students, of course, have concerns about being able to stand up in front of the classroom and make a presentation. So that usually requires a bit of work to encourage them and to make them see how this could be a great tool for them going forward in life. Also, sometimes people don't work very well with each other.
Sure.
And that is, again, as somebody who has worked in the industry, I can tell you that off the bat, that's a quality that is sought. So it is, we're teaching them that subliminally to be able to work with each other and effectively work with each other.
You might not like each other, but if you work towards a common goal, because you're not going to like everybody just in any type of working climate or industry. You don't have to like everybody, but if you're working towards a common goal, you can get a lot done.
You're so
and that is a skill that's, it can be learned, but not everybody has off the bat. And what you're doing in your class really cultivates that too. You're hitting all these amazing skills that they'll find in the workplace and on the job site too.
I really hope so, because that is the endeavor. I've had cases where they find it difficult and they give up and they want a way out or a different assignment. But I've had cases where they had problems, but they come back together and they make it work. So it's a mix. The learning curve for everybody is different, and I guess we can't expect the same pace. But it's nice to see the attempt that's being made. So sharing examples, letting them know how it's useful in their life, in their careers, how it's going to be something that they can benefit from, definitely helps.
So now we're going to bring up some of the highlights if you want to expand on some of these.
Yes, I do think the key takeaways are that there's great peer learning, because no better way to foster a community learning than to each other. And it's also through active participation, because they're not just passive learners here. They're actively generating the content that they're learning from, which is great because it keeps them alert all the time. And because each of them comes from a different background, different part of where they're living in. Not everybody here is from there. So they all have different diverse perspectives that can add a whole new dimension of learning. It just opens your mind to the way they sometimes approach things. It's huge. You're right. It's huge. I sit there and I learn from them because I learn different perspectives from them. And of course, it's highly motivating because it holds them accountable for the information that they have generated. They're responsible for the sources. And not any of them, the dynamics of groups. While we've talked about some of the challenges, there's another great way deep study is done, which prove that there is something called group dynamics, that if people come together, even in informal groups to work together, you will find that they lean on each other. They're not going to let the other person down. So that happens, and there's a higher level of accountability and a motivation to work for the others. The other day I had a student who walked right up and said, I was to work with this person. They had never met each other. They did the entire work virtually, and he stood in front of the whole class and said, she finished it and I just took over. So I think it took a lot to say that.
Oh, absolutely.
To be there. So it gives great feedback and support to each other. There are times that people may be ill, there may be a time they're working, to be able to understand and work with other people's schedule. All of these are great takeaways.
And these are all great skills that you've instilled in your students throughout this assignment. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we tell these great people goodbye?
Yeah, I just want to say that this model, of course, I've spoken only from the marketing perspective because that's the core subject I teach, but this model can be used in any area. So if we can encourage them to learn from each other, we'll probably see great benefits.
Good.
Thank you so much for giving me the time to listen to my idea and how I use it in my classroom. And feel free to share your ideas with me because we're all here to inspire each other.
Thank you.